Cops handcuff Black CEO General for talking back. One call to Pentagon ends their careers. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. The first thing that cut through the night wasn't the siren. It was his voice. Sharp, cold, delivered like a verdict. "Ma'am, you don't talk back to an officer." Those words snapped against the concrete alleyway, like a baton hitting steel. The street was dim, the kind of dim that swallowed whole blocks except for the violent flash of red-blue patrol lights bouncing off the brick walls. Shadows moved in jagged pulses. The air smelled like cold asphalt and arrogance. And she stood there alone back against the wall, hands visible, eyes forward. Unshaken, Major General Amina Cole didn't look like command tonight. Black bomber jacket, tight braids pulled high. No uniform, no ribbons, no insignia. Just the calm of someone who had been here before, too many times before. Captain Willis stepped closer, chest puffed, authority dripping from every button on his navy blue uniform. His grip wrapped around her forearm, firm enough to bruise, confident enough to show he'd done this before. "Look at me when I'm speaking to you," he barked. She didn't move. She didn't blink. She only lifted her chin a fraction, the smallest, quietest act of defiance. Behind him, Officer Harris leaned against the squad car, smirking like he was watching late-night entertainment instead of an unlawful escalation. The red-blue light washed over his young, smug face. "You hear the captain? Don't get cute now." Amina inhaled slowly, measured, controlled. That kind of breath you take when you know that reacting is exactly what they want. She'd seen this scene at 19, at 24, at 32. Different cities, différents uniformes, same script. But tonight it was happening 10 miles from the Pentagon. Willis shoved her shoulder back against the wall, as if proving something to himself. "You don't correct an officer. You answer an officer." Her voice was low, almost gentle. "I wasn't correcting you. I was stating the law." Willis's jaw twitched. "You think you know the law better than me?" A pause, a phantom, and then the first crack in the night, the kind that doesn't show in sound. Only in tension, as she said, "Yes." That was when his patience snapped. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." The command hit the air like lightning. Harris straightened, eager. Amina didn't move, not in fear, but in certainty. Before the moment could spiral, a voice broke through the cold alley. "Hey, hold up." A man stepped out from behind a parked sedan, hands raised halfway. Late 30s, worn leather jacket, and the unmistakable bearing of someone who had spent years in uniform himself. Sergeant Miller. He'd recognized the way she stood. Still, rooted, composed like a soldier at parade rest. "I know her," he said, breath visible in the night. "I've seen her before." Willis cut him off with a snap. "Keep walking, Sergeant. This doesn't concern you." But Miller didn't move. His eyes stayed on Amina. "She's military," he said quietly. "High rank." Harris laughed under his breath. "Yeah, and I'm the Secretary of Defense." Willis smirked, tightening his grip. "If she's military, then she should damn well know her place." Amina's gaze finally shifted. Not to Willis, not to Harris, to Miller. "Speak," her eyes said. "Say it." But he hesitated. And in that silence, that fragile, heavy silence, Willis reached for his cuffs. Metal glinted, the world narrowed, and the street held its breath. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to Amina. The cuffs clicked open in Willis's hand. He grabbed her wrist. And the whole night began to shift. Captain Willis tightened his grip on her wrist, fingers digging in like he wanted the bruise to speak louder than his authority. The red-blue lights pulsed again, washing across her face, half shadow, half flame, as if the night itself couldn't decide which version of her to reveal. Officer Harris stepped closer, boots scraping the asphalt. "You heard the captain. Turn around." Amina didn't move. She didn't resist. She didn't run. She simply existed, and somehow that was enough to set both men on edge. Willis leaned in, breath sharp with power. What's with the attitude, huh? People like you always think you can challenge authority. Amina's eyes narrowed just slightly. People like me? Define that. He smirked. You know exactly what I mean. The air snapped. It wasn't just tension anymore, it was exposure. Old, ugly assumptions, stripped bare under the streetlights. Harris laughed. Cap, she's stalling. Just cuff her. She wants an audience. An audience. That was when the universe answered. A door creaked open across the alley. Footsteps. A figure stepping into the glow of the headlights. Sergeant Miller again. This time closer. Expression sharpened by something more than concern. Amina, he blurted, then froze. Willis whipped around. You know her? The sergeant swallowed hard, realizing the mistake. I've seen her before. I think she's... I don't care what you think, Willis snapped. This is my stop, my authority, my street. Mila didn't back away. His voice steadied. She wasn't doing anything. You pulled her from her own vehicle for correcting a traffic code. Harris scoffed. Buddy, you want to join her? Keep talking. The sergeant ignored him, eyes fixed on Amina, not in pity, but in recognition. Not fear, not confusion, recognition. Like he was remembering a headline. A ceremony, a Pentagon press briefing, a face seen once, but impossible to forget. But Amina offered him nothing. No signal, no permission, just a calm stare that said, let them show who they are. Willis shoved her harder than necessary, forcing her cheek close to the cold concrete. You military? He taunted. You one of those paper pushers who think they're above the law? Amina inhaled slowly. That same quiet breath controlled, channeled, sharpened. Mila stepped forward again. Captain, stop. You don't want to do this. Oh, I think I do. Willis growled. He pulled out the cuffs. Metal glinted, cold, hungry. For a moment, the entire street slowed like the night itself was bracing for impact. Amina's voice sliced through it. Officer Willis, she said softly, you are escalating an unlawful detention. He scoffed. Am I? Yes. Based on what? Based on the way you grabbed me without cause. Based on your language. Based on your assumptions. Come to. She paused. And based on the fact that you're ignoring a witness. Miller lifted his hands. She's right. You've crossed the line. Willis snapped. Sergeant, you're seconds away from obstruction. But Harris hesitated. Just a flicker. A doubt. Barely noticeable but real. Because even he could feel it. The imbalance. The wrongness. The shift beginning to crack under their feet. A car slowed at the end of the block. A window rolled down. Someone recording. A voice whispering. Yo, what's going on here? The world was waking up around them. Eyes. Cameras. Witnesses. And in the center, Amina Cole stood still, not passive, but poised. Not afraid, but calculating. Waiting for the exact second the night would turn. And it wasn't far now. Captain Willis snapped the cuffs open with a single, practiced flick, a metallic crack that sliced straight through the alley. The sound hit like a warning shot. Not loud, just final. Hands behind your back, he ordered. Amina didn't move. Not because she couldn't, because she refused to surrender dignity so easily. Willis stepped in closer, shadows carving deep lines across his face. You think you're special? You think you can stand here and lecture me? Harris circled to her right side, posture tightening. Cap, let's just finish this. She's slowing us down. That word again, finish. As if she were a task, a problem, an inconvenience that needed removing. Willis grabbed her by the elbow and yanked her away from the wall. The force wasn't necessary, but it was intentional. Dominance, disguised as procedure. Amina's jaw tensed, the only sign that the pain reached her. Miller stepped forward, hands raised. Captain, that's enough. She hasn't resisted once. This is excessive. Back off, Sergeant, Willis barked. This is what happens when civilians forget their place. Civilians. The word struck harder than the grip on her arm. Amina's gaze darkened, not with anger, with memory. Flashback, a desert checkpoint, Iraq, 2007. She was a young captain, dusty boots, tired eyes. A private twice, denied her entry into her own command tent because he didn't think she looked like a senior officer. She'd stood outside, under the beating sun for 20 minutes, until another officer corrected him. 20 minutes, long enough for humiliation to root itself in bone. Back to now, the alley felt the same. Different country, différent uniforme, same doubt, same assumption. Willis jerked at her arm again. You listening? I gave you an order. Amina looked him dead in the eye. I heard you. Then comply. No. The alley froze. Harris's hand hovered near his taser. Miller's breath caught in his throat. Even the car recording at the corner seemed to go silent. Willis leaned in until she could smell the stale coffee on his breath. This is going to go very badly for you. Quote. No, she replied softly. It's going very badly for you. Her tone wasn't loud. Wasn't defiant. Just certain, like she was reciting a fact already written into the night. Willis shoved her again. You better hope someone cares enough to back you up. Amina didn't flinch. They already do. Who? Your friend over there? Willis scoffed, nodding toward Miller. He's not saving you. Amina lifted her wrist slightly. A souple motion, barely noticeable. But the smartwatch screen woke with a single coded flash. Harris frowned. What was that? Amina didn't look away from Willis. Your mistake. Willis grabbed her wrist roughly, twisting it down. What's this? A threat? A trick? It's a call, she said. One you should pray isn't answered. Miller's eyes widened. He'd heard rumors about Pentagon crisis protocols, silent signals used only by high-ranking officers. But those were stories. Legends. Classified procedures whispered in training halls. Were they real? Willis tightened his grip. You want to play games? Fine. You're under arrest. He slammed her hands behind her back. The cold ring of the cuffs snapped shut around her wrists. A metallic click echoed across the street. 1 second of silence followed. One long, thick, heavy second, the kind that changes everything. And in that breath between escalation and consequence, Amina Cole lifted her chin, eyes locked on the patrol lights as they danced across the night sky. Something in her expression shifted. Not fear, not defeat, readiness, because the storm they thought they controlled was about to answer back. The cuffs click shut, final, metallic, absolute. Amina stood still, wrists bound behind her, head lifted as if the night itself needed to see her clearly. Captain Willis tightened his hold, pride swelling in his chest. There we go, he said. Finally, some compliance. But the alley didn't feel victorious. It felt charged, as if something invisible had just shifted off its axis. Officer Harris stepped in front of her, hands on his belt, a grin twitching at the corner of his mouth. You know, Cap, some people only learn the hard way. Quote. A group of bystanders hovered near the sidewalk, now 2 teens filming, a rideshare driver leaning against his door, a jogger who'd stopped dead in her tracks. The street was collecting witnesses the way storms collect lightning. And in that growing hush, Sergeant Miller made a choice. He stepped forward again, farther than before, past the invisible line most people never crossed when cops were involved. That's enough, he said, louder this time. She didn't resist. She didn't threaten you. And she gave you the correction because you were wrong, Captain. Willis turned, face snapping toward him like a whip. Excuse me? Miller didn't flinch. I said you were wrong. Harris barked a laugh. Look at this. A hero. But the laugh didn't land. Not anymore. Not with the way the crowd shifted, inching closer, eyes narrowing on the injustice unfolding. Amina watched Miller carefully. The way his shoulders locked. The way his jaw set. The way his voice tried to be calm, even though his chest fought to rise evenly. He wasn't reckless. He was awake. Willis squared up to him. You want to be next? You interfering with my arrest? There was no cause for arrest, Miller said. She spoke. That's it. She spoke. Willis stepped forward, chest to chest with him. You don't tell me how to do my job. I'm telling you what's right, Miller replied. And then, the smallest, sharpest inhale from Officer Harris. I'll hesitation. Just a flicker, because even he felt it now. The tension wasn't one-sided anymore. The alley had tilted. Amina broke the silence first. Not loud, not angry, just steady. Sergeant, she said, do you know the protocol for an unlawful detainment of a U.S. service member? Willis spun back to her. Oh, please, you're not military. Don't start that act now. But Miller looked at her, really looked, and something clicked behind his eyes. He remembered the face, not from neighborhood rumors, from a screen, from a briefing. A woman standing beside Pentagon brass, speaking about cyber warfare modernization. A name spoken with the kind of weight only a few in the country carried. "Ma'am," he whispered, breath thinning. "Are you who I think you are?" Amina didn't answer. Her silence did. Willis scoffed. "This is ridiculous. She's nobody. You're all buying into her little performance." A voice rose from behind the bystanders. A woman, early 40s, glasses slipping down her nose, phone held high. She wasn't doing anything. She called out. "You grabbed her first. We all saw it." Another voice layered in, a young man recording from his car window. "She told you the law, dude. Since when is that resisting?" The crowd pressed forward, no longer shy, no longer quiet. One witness became two. Two became five. Five became a wall. A wall made not of force, but of eyes, phones, and undeniable truth. Willis's confidence fractured. "The hell is wrong with all of you? I gave a lawful order." But even his own partner's posture softened, uncertainty cutting through the adrenaline. Amina lifted her chin. "Captain Willis," she said quietly, "you are detaining the wrong person. For the wrong reason. In front of the wrong witnesses." He rolled his eyes. "Oh, really? And who exactly are these witnesses going to tell?" Amina's gaze slid toward the smartwatch, still glowing faintly on her wrist. "The people who are listening," she said. And for the first time all night, Willis looked uneasy. Captain Willis took one step closer, too close, his breath hitting the cold night air like steam from a ruptured pipe. "You think these people are gonna save you?" He jerked his chin toward the witnesses. "A bunch of bystanders with shaky phone cameras? Please." Amina said nothing. She didn't have to. Silence was its own verdict. Willis grabbed her bound wrists and wrenched them upward, just high enough that pain rushed through her shoulder. A collective gasp rippled through the sidewalk. "Hey!" someone shouted. "That's excessive force." Willis snapped back. "Stay out of it." But the command didn't travel far. Not tonight. The air swallowed it like it had lost authority halfway through the sentence. Officer Harris shifted uneasily, boots scraping the pavement. "Cap, maybe we should slow this down." Quote. Willis glared at him. "Since when do you question me?" Harris didn't answer, but his silence carried the truth. This was spiraling. Amina's voice cut through the tension, soft, low, like a blade wrapped in velvet. "You're making a mistake, Captain." He leaned in, eyes burning. "No, ma'am. You made the mistake." And then he said it. The sentence that dropped like a stone into the night. People like you never learn until they're put in their place. The alley froze. Phones lifted higher. Miller's fists clenched. Even Harris went still, eyes widening, breath halting like he realized a line had been crossed that couldn't be walked back. Amina's expression didn't crack. Not even a tremor. But something inside her shifted, quiet, subtle, seismic. Another flashback. Sharper, older, deeper. She was 15, standing in a grocery store parking lot in Georgia. A security guard grabbed her backpack, accusing her of stealing snacks she hadn't touched. The same tone, the same assumption, the same words. "People like you don't shop here." Her mother's voice echoing in memory, steady but tired. "Baby, they don't see who you are. They see what they expect." Now, years later, in a dim alley behind the Pentagon's shadow, the words had returned, history folding in on itself. Amina breathed in slowly. When she spoke again, her voice didn't shake. It sharpened. "Captain Willis, tell me something." "Ka," he scoffed. "What? Why do you think you have the right to speak to me that way?" He smirked. "Because I'm the one with the cuffs, that's why." Miller stepped forward until he was nearly between them. "That's not how the law works, Captain." "Back up," Willis snapped. But Miller didn't. This time, he refused. "You've crossed the line," he said, louder now. "You laid hands on her before she ever resisted. You escalated, not her." Willis shoved him with his free hand. "You want to lose your job tonight? Keep talking." A chorus of voices rose from the sidewalk. "She didn't do anything." He grabbed her first. "Let her go." "That's illegal." The crowd wasn't a crowd anymore. It was a verdict. Harris swallowed hard. Cap, we need to call this in. No, Willis snapped. No one calls anything. But the smartwatch on Amina's wrist blinked again, one single pulse. Not a notification, not a message, a trigger. Willis noticed it too late. What is that? He barked. Amina lifted her head, eyes locked on him with a calm so absolute it became unnerving. You just activated a federal alert, she said. He froze. What alert? The one that tracks when a senior officer is unlawfully detained. Harris's face drained. Miller exhaled sharply. The witnesses murmured, the shift unmistakable. And for the first time all night, Captain Willis looked afraid. The moment Amina said federal alert, the alley seemed to inhale. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a subtle tightening, like the night itself was bracing for what came next. Captain Willis's grip loosened only slightly, but enough for the witnesses to notice. What? What kind of alert? He asked, voice lower now, forced through clenched teeth. Amina didn't turn. Her wrists were still cuffed, her posture still anchored, but her presence shifted. Quiet power unfurling like a banner no one had realized was there. A classified escalation protocol, she said, used when a U.S. general officer is detained without cause. Harris blinked hot. General. General what? Miller swallowed, voice barely holding steady. Cap, I told you. She looked familiar. Willis shook his head, denial clinging to him like sweat. No, that's impossible. Amina raised her cuffed hand slightly, not to resist, but to show him exactly where to look. The smartwatch blinked again. This time, instead of one pulse, it emitted three sharp flashes, 3 signals known only to a handful of people in the country. Willis stepped back. What did you just do? Amina's answer was simple, precise, lethal. I contacted the Pentagon. Silence cracked across the alley. Harris stared at her, breath hitching. You're lying. No, Miller whispered, shaking his head. She's not. Amina lowered her hands, and then calmly she spoke into the air, as if addressing an invisible room. Verification code, Delta 7, patch command. The smartwatch's screen brightened, and a voice clear, clipped, unmistakably official, came through its tiny speaker. General Cole, we have received your alert. Confirm status. The witnesses froze. Willis froze. Harris's knees nearly buckled. Amina's voice remained level. Status. Detained. Location. Arlington Perimeter. Sector 9. Officers involved. 2. Quote. A quiet gasp rippled through the sidewalk. The Pentagon voice continued. General, a response unit is en route. Stand by. Do not comply with further commands. Willis staggered back as if struck. What the hell? She's really... Hadi's voice cracked. Maya General? Cole? Amina Cole, the cyber defense director? Amina didn't confirm. She didn't need to. Her silence was answer enough. One of the teens recording whispered to his friend. Bro, she's like, top tier. This dude is done. Willis's face twisted, confusion collapsing into panic. This is insane. This can't. It can. Miller cut in. And it is. The alley filled with tension so sharp, it felt like static buzzing along the skin. Amina lifted her head, eyes steady. Captain Willis, she said, you are holding a general officer in restraints during a lawful stop. You ignored protocol. You escalated without cause. You used discriminatory language. And now you are interfering with a federal response. Willis looked around desperately, as if anyone might tell him it wasn't happening. But the witnesses watched him like a jury. Phones were up, cameras rolling, truth swinging into focus. Harris finally spoke, voice small. Cap, remove the cuffs. Now. Willis' hands trembled. Amina took one step forward, wrists still raised behind her, posture regal, even in chains. You wanted authority, she said quietly. Now you're about to meet it. And then, distant but approaching fast, came the unmistakable sound. Low, heavy, engine roaring, tires gripping asphalt. A convoy, a Pentagon convoy, and the night shifted again. This time in her favor. The convoy didn't arrive quietly. It thundered, heavy tires grinding asphalt, engines rumbling with military precision, headlights slicing the dark like white blades. Phones lifted everywhere. Witnesses stepped back, stunned, as 3 black SUVs rolled into the alley, flanking the police cruiser like wolves surrounding a much smaller prey. Willis froze. Harris stiffened. Miller exhaled, as if he'd been holding air for minutes. The SUVs stopped in a perfect V formation. Doors opened in sync, clean, sharp, rehearsed. 4 Pentagon security officers stepped out, all in tactical uniforms with chest rigs and encrypted comms. Not police, not city, federal. Their commanding officer, tall, stern, silver hair cut to regulation, strode forward. "General Cole," he said, voice firm enough to shake the alley. "We responded to your alert. Are you unharmed?" Willis's face drained of color. Harris looked like his soul tried to exit through his boots. Amina slowly turned, hands still cuffed, posture straight as a blade. "Unharmed," she replied, "but unlawfully detained." The officer nodded once. His gaze slid to Captain Willis, cold, dissecting, unforgiving. "Who placed the restraints?" he asked. Willis opened his mouth. Nothing came out. His jaw worked like he was chewing fear. Harris swallowed. Captain did. The commanding officer stepped toward Willis, boots echoing like a gavel slamming with each step. "Captain Willis," he said, "you have handcuffed a Major General of the United States Armed Forces. You failed to verify identity. You ignored a witness. You escalated force without cause. And you interfered with classified federal protocol." Willis stuttered. I didn't know she didn't say." Amina spoke, her voice soft but devastating. "You didn't ask." Those 3 words hit harder than any shout could. The officer continued, tone dropping to a deadlier register. "Captain, step forward. Hands where I can see them." Willis obeyed shakily. Phones caught everything. Amina lifted her wrist slightly behind her back. "Remove the cuffs," she said. She wasn't pleading. She was issuing an order. Harris didn't hesitate. He moved faster than his training had prepared him for, unlocking the cuffs as if they were burning his hands. Metal clicked open. Amina brought her hands forward, wrists lined with red marks, silent testimony to the last 10 minutes of ignorance. The commanding officer faced the crowd. "For witness documentation," he said clearly, "let it be noted that a U.S. Major General was detained without provocation." The witnesses murmured, some shocked, some furious, some shaking their heads in disbelief. Miller stepped toward Amina, eyes soft with respect. "Ma'am," he said quietly, I'm sorry I didn't speak sooner." Amina looked at him not with judgment, but clarity. "You did," she said, "when it mattered." Then she finally turned her gaze back to Willis and Harris. This was the moment. The drop. The twist. The cinematic silence before the verdict. Amina's voice cut clean through the night. "You handcuffed a general for talking back. And now the Pentagon is here. For you." The alley, the crowd, the officers, all went still. Then the commanding officer spoke again. "Captain Willis, Officer Harris, you are relieved of duty effective immediately. Your badges, now." Willis's breath shook as he unpinned his badge, placing it in the officer's waiting glove. Harris followed, hands trembling. Amina stepped forward, her presence filling the space like a rising tide. "You didn't know who I was," she said softly. "The problem is how you treated someone you thought didn't matter." Not loud, not angry, just truth. And truth was enough to end careers. Tốt, viết tiếp với 600 token cho part 8, hiện có phiên bản GPT mới, The badges hit the Pentagon officer's glove with 2 soft metallic taps, small sounds, but enough to echo through the entire alley. Captain Willis stood frozen, staring at the empty space on his chest, as if the badge might magically reappear. It didn't. Harris looked even worse, jaw slack, hands hovering helplessly at his sides. Witnesses whispered, "Damn, they really lost their jobs." She wasn't lying. She's actually a general. This is crazy. The commanding officer turned toward his team. "Document everything. Audio, video, timestamps, crowd statements." 2 federal agents began sweeping the scene with body cams, capturing every second of the unlawful detainment. No angle missed, no detail spared. Willis stumbled forward. Sir, wait, please. This is a misunderstanding." She looked. Amina's eyebrows lifted the slightest bit. She looked. "What? Willis opened his mouth, closed it. His throat bobbed, with the bitter taste of reality. "I didn't recognize." Amina stepped closer, her voice quiet but cutting. "You didn't need to recognize me. You only needed to recognize the law." Harris finally snapped out of his stupor, hands shaking as he tried to explain. "Ma'am, we thought the vehicle might have been stolen." Her keys were in her hand. A witness interjected. "She wasn't driving erratically," another said. "She literally corrected the traffic code," someone added. The alley turned into a courtroom, and every bystander became a piece of evidence. Harris swallowed hard. Okay. But the attitude, a collective exhale of disbelief, swept across the crowd. Amina looked at him, expression unreadable. "You interpreted correction as attitude. You interpreted confidence as threat. And you interpreted my presence as a problem." Harris's face crumpled. "I didn't, men." "But you did," she said softly. The softness hit harder than fury ever could. The commanding officer stepped in again. "Captain Willis, Officer Harris, your actions tonight violated federal protocol and civil rights statutes. You will be escorted for immediate review and further disciplinary action." Willis panicked, turning to the witnesses. "You all saw her, she was she." But the crowd didn't buy the panic. They'd seen too much, heard too much. A man near the front raised his voice. "You treated her like crap because of what she looked like. Don't spin it now." A woman beside him added, "You didn't even check her ID until after you cuffed her." Another chimed in, "You escalated everything for no reason." It was a chorus, a dam breaking. And now nothing could stop it. Miller stepped forward again, voice low but certain. "I gave you 3 warnings, Captain. 3. You ignored everyone." Willis turned on him with desperation. "You should have backed me. You're a cop." "I'm a veteran first," Miller said. "And she's my commanding officer." The alley went silent again. Amina turned toward Miller, eyes steady, acknowledging, grateful, without ever needing to say it aloud. The commanding officer returned his attention to the disgraced policeman. "Escort them." 2 federal agents stepped in, flanking Willis and Harris. Their protests rose but weakly, without the weight of conviction. "This isn't fair," quote. "She set us up. She tricked us." But their words had no audience anymore. They weren't feared. They weren't followed. They weren't respected. They were simply done. As the agents guided them toward the SUVs, Amina took one step forward, enough for her voice to reach them clearly. "You thought your badge protected you," she said quietly. "It protected the people you served, not the harm you chose." Willis's shoulders slumped. Harris's eyes lowered. No more excuses left. No more defiance. Only consequence. The crowd parted as the disgraced officers were taken away, phones high, eyes wide, breath held. And in that cleared path, under the harsh, strobing lights of the federal convoy, Amina Cole stood unmoving, not triumphant, not cruel, just resolute, a living reminder that calm is not weakness, and justice does not need volume to be heard. Tốt, viết tiếp với 700 token cho Patin, hiện có phiên bản GPT mới. Tiếp. The alley emptied the moment the SUVs pulled away, carrying Willis and Harris into the kind of silence reserved for the end of careers. The witnesses lingered only a moment longer, just long enough to capture the last frame on their phones, whispering in disbelief before slipping back into the night. In minutes, the chaos faded. Only the echo remained. Pentagon engines, now idling, cold air drifting through the narrow street, and Amina Cole standing still beneath the pulse of the overhead street lamp. No cuffs, no fear, just the quiet weight of authority reclaiming its space. The commanding officer approached her, boots clicking with disciplined cadence. "General Cole," he said, voice solid, "medical unit is on standby. Would you like—" "No," she replied. "I'm fine." He studied her posture, the steadiness in her gaze, the control in her breath. "Your mother would have said the same," he murmured. Amina's eyes softened at the edges, only slightly, enough for a private ache to surface for half a heartbeat. "Yes," she said. "She would." He nodded. "We've logged everything. The Attorney General's office will receive the full report within the hour. Civil Rights Division will initiate review tomorrow morning." Amina released a slow, controlled breath. "Good," she said. "Accountability shouldn't end at an alley." Quote. As he stepped back, Miller approached hesitant, hat in hand, The way a soldier approaches their superior after a moment that tests both character and courage. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "if you need me to provide a statement, I will, for whatever comes next." She looked at him, really looked. A man who stepped in when others stayed silent. Not perfectly, not immediately, but when it counted. "You already did," she told him, "and it mattered." Mila swallowed, nodding deeply. Something proud flickered in his expression. Relief. Respect. Maybe even redemption. A Pentagon medic approached then, offering a small flashlight for a routine check. Amina gently waved it off. "I'm heading home," she said. "Under escort?" the medic asked. "No," Amina replied. "They've taken enough space in this night." But the commanding officer stepped forward. "Ma'am, with respect, protocol requires." "Then update the protocol," she said calmly. A pause. Then he nodded, understanding the message beneath the words. This wasn't just about two officers. This was about every alley, every street, every person who'd ever been forced to prove their humanity before they could speak. Amina turned toward her SUV, the witnesses now long gone, the street quiet enough to hear distant traffic humming like a low drumline across the city. She placed her hand on the door handle, then paused, glancing back. One last look at the alley, where everything had unfolded. Her voice was low, steady, carved in granite. "They treated me like a threat," she said, "because they couldn't imagine I held power." The commanding officer bowed his head slightly. "People fear what they don't understand," he said. Amina shook her head. "No," she replied. "People fear losing the control they never deserved." The alley swallowed the words like an oath. She opened the SUV door, but didn't step in yet. Instead, she looked at the medic, the Pentagon security, Miller, and the last remaining agent packing gear into the truck. "Listen carefully," she said, her tone shifting, this time carrying the weight of someone who had commanded rooms far bigger than this alley. "This isn't about rank, or me, or tonight." They waited. "It's about every person who's been told they don't belong in a place they earned. Every voice dismissed. Every correction mistaken for defiance. Every silence mistaken for weakness." Her gaze hardened, not in anger, but purpose. "If we want justice, we don't need louder laws. We need braver people." She let the words hang, as if allowing the night to absorb them. Then she added, almost a whisper but sharp enough to live on in memory, "I didn't raise my voice tonight. I raised the standard." The alley seemed to still. Even the distant hum of the city felt quieter. Listening. She stepped into the SUV and closed the door with a soft, decisive click. The convoy repositioned behind her, but at her signal, they shut off their lights. No spectacle, no parade. Just dignity. As her vehicle pulled away, the street returned to darkness, not the fearful kind, but the clean, emptied kind that follows a storm. A storm that didn't roar. A storm that didn't rage. A storm that simply arrived, revealed the truth, and left clarity in its wake. A storm named Amina Cole. Kiểm tra lại xem toàn bộ nội dung của 9 phần có tính đồng nhất và liên kết mạch truyện trong cùng một câu chuyện không? Có LNB chưa? Có nội dung hành động nào bất hợp lý phi thực tế không? Hiện có phiên bản GPT mới. Tiếp tục.